All right. Well, listen, we are moving to our member-specific segment. This month's theme, this round's theme, is old school. We're going to go back in time, and we're going to talk about how games have affected our lives, moments in our gaming history that are particularly meaningful to us. Maddie, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I'll just give you a little background on my gaming world. So I am an only child. I do have two half sisters, but I did not live with them most of my life. So most of my childhood was spent alone with a single mother who worked full time. And so I had to spend a lot of time alone, and I got good at being alone. I was a big reader. But I had two big passions. One was video games and the other was Legos. So those are the two obsessions for probably 10 years of my life, probably from like 4 to like 14.
Did you have like huge Lego sets? Were you of the era when the Lego sets were just Lego pieces and you could do what you want with them?
Right. So, and this is an important part of it. So board games have combined these two things for me. So the video games to me were all about exploration. I really only liked adventure games and games where there was a story, but the story wasn't important to me. What was important to me was seeing more. I always wanted to see more.
Like Zork and...
No, like Legend of Zelda. I was obsessed with
yes.
Zelda. I was obsessed with Dragon Quest and RPGs as well, but I really liked a game where I could just control a character, and beating a game to me was about, like, I wanted to see it all. I wanted to see the world. It felt like traveling, like exploring to me. And Zelda captured that best, this feeling of like going out into a new world and seeing new things. And Legos to me were about perfectly following the rules. I was not a creative Lego builder. I bought complicated high piece sets and would build them perfectly to the letter. And that was nothing relaxed me more than just perfectly following the rules and building it exactly as they said it should be built. I loved that. It was the opposite of creative task. It was controlled, and if I followed the rules, I would succeed.
Now, I joke with you about having OCD, but there's like a little bit of that. Do you think that was a soothing mechanism for that 100%. Little part of your brain?
It totally soothing for me in that it was. I like knowing a guaranteed end result. I like knowing if I put in this effort and focus, I will get exactly what's on the box. And, you know, I had my childhood was...
That's got to be very comforting for a little kid, right?
Yeah, and my childhood was chaotic. I had a broken home and a difficult relationship with my father, and I was in therapy from a very young age, and so I had a lot of troubles at home, and so that was very calming to me. Was these controlled, enjoying, relaxing things, and then I just had a shelf of finished Legos, and I never played with them. I just like built them, put them up there, and I'd be like, let's get the next one.
You are not to touch the Legos.
Yeah, I mean, I would arrange, like, playing with them was to like move the guys around and create a cool scene that I could like look at, you know.
Dioramas.
Yeah, exactly. There were dioramas to me. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's nice.
And there
awesome.
I could be like, look at all the cool, like, the giant. I remember for Hanukkah one year, I got the giant pirate ship, which was probably like, my mom probably couldn't eat that month or something, but like we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, it was probably $100 at the time, which is probably equivalent to like $400 today or something.
So half of a Lego set now.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like the pinnacle of the presents I've ever gotten in my life. So to me, like, that was always my gaming was, and I got really into Gundam, like in my like late 20s. Like I went to Japan,
dude,
and I really enjoyed building Gundam. And that to me was like, when I found Gundam, I was like, oh, it's Legos. Is this just Legos?
You would have lost your damn mind if you had gone with Matt Patterson and Paul and I to the Gundam Museum and the massive Gundam shop.
I've always wanted
when we were in Tokyo.
Well, when I was in Japan, that's when I became obsessed with Gundam. I went there in my late 20s, and like,
how can you not be? Everything.
Yeah, I came home and I was like, I build Gundam now. Like
they sell diapers with Gundams now.
Exactly.
It's crazy over there.
But I had the exact same thing. It's like, these are hard to build. They take time, and if you really focus, it'll look as good as on the box. And I got into the painting and all that stuff.
If you spend enough time with the glue, amazing things happen.
But it was right after I found Gundam that I found board games. And board games to me were the combination of my obsession with a relaxing activity that involves following rules and getting an end result, and exploration, which is what I have loved with video games. And I played video games my whole life. I've been a massive video game player. I had a horrible World of warcraft addiction for much of my 20s. And to me, it was always exploration was my favorite part. I want to see every part of this giant, massive world, and I want to explore everything. Like that was what I enjoyed.
Well, that's the storyteller in you a little bit, right?
Totally, yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. My relaxing activities are always about not being creative. I want to enjoy somebody else's world, and then I want to follow rules and know what the end result will be. And both of those things are the opposite of writing. Like in writing, I have to create my own world, and there's no rules, and nobody to help me, and it's a blank page. So like I've combined the two things are the opposite. Somebody else's world that they've created. I don't have to do any thinking. I just get to see their world and rules. And so I found Battlestar Galactica, which was my first board game I ever played, first modern board game. As a kid, I liked board games, but I wasn't obsessed. I liked Battleship. I liked Monopoly. I went through phases where I played Monopoly and stuff.
Sure.
But it wasn't defined by it at all. I played some chess with my dad. But I was not a board gamer. I was not a D&Der. The ranking of my lack of coolness was I was not cool enough to be invited to the D&D sessions. That's how not cool I was.
That's how not cool you were?
Yeah, literally, they invited me once and didn't invite me again. Like, I thought anybody could play D&D. Like, I wasn't even cool enough for the D&D people. They were like, nah, that guy's a nerd.
Show me on the doll where they hurt you.
Yeah, exactly.
They hurt you bad.
It was hurtful, actually. I really wanted to play D&D with them. So I found Battlestar Galactica, I think just through like internet one day. I was just like, I loved the show Battlestar Galactica, and they were like, here's a complicated game. And I was like, what? And I remember like reading the rule book and just having a life-changing experience of just being like, oh, they've combined all my favorite things. Like this is a complicated thing that will take time to learn, but if you put in the time and the effort, you will get the result that they're telling you you're going to get.
And you'll explore a world.
And you'll explore. And so those are the things that I look for in board games. And I've also wasn't a social kid. I didn't have I had a handful of very close friends throughout my life, but I was never very social. I was I wasn't antisocial, but I was shy and quiet and really liked being alone. I was a kid who spent most of my childhood alone and most of my teenage years alone too. So board gaming was a huge part of like, I found, I think a part of it was I don't enjoy interacting with people the way most people enjoy it. I really don't like small talk. I really don't like parties. I liked parties when I used to smoke weed and drink and like, but I don't like.
But you would medicate yourself before the event, right?
A little bit. I don't know. I think I guess I have social anxiety, but it's not really anxiety as much as I just don't enjoy that way of interacting with people. I don't like just standing there and just interviewing each other, and that's what it feels like to me.
As we say, extroverts draw their energy from contact with others. Introverts draw their energy from time alone.
Yeah,
and you are definitely, by that definition, you are a classic introvert.
Oh yeah, 100%. Oh, I need 8 times as much time alone as with other people.
We saw you melt down at the end of those LARPs. We knew it was just like it's too much, and we get that.
But I love people, and I love being around people, and I think with board games, I found my favorite way to be with people, and I think that's a profound life-changing experience. Like I got to do this thing I always did alone my whole life, which was building Legos and playing exploration video games. But now I get to do my favorite things with other people. And now that's my favorite thing to do. I would much rather do that than be alone. You know, So board games, and honestly, when I first read the rule book for Battlestar Galactica, it was like finding a new color I'd never seen before. I didn't know that I could get the things I love with other people at the same time.
Oh yeah. Do you remember the first time you discovered BoardGameGeek.com?
Yeah, it was probably right after I was introduced to you. And yeah, I mean, it blew my mind. I mean, I'm a very obsessive hobbyist. Like if I get into something, it's scary. I'm all in, and it's life consuming, and I'm listening to 13 podcasts about it. And, you know, I mean, it takes over my life. Doesn't matter what it is. I dive all the way in.
But it's pretty rare, you know, as writers, we do a lot of research. We do a lot of study. We know a lot of things about a lot of things. We tend to be garbage cans of useless information in a wide variety of areas. When I discovered Board Game Geek, and I'm like, what the heck are all of these? I don't know what these things are. I've never heard of any of these games, and there's a huge community, and people are writing reviews and session reports about them, and I was absolutely blown away. It's like I had found a key to a nocturnal world that I didn't know existed. It was like literally finding Narnia.
Totally. No, board gaming has changed my life in a really positive way. It's really helped me understand how I interact with people. And I think it's important to interact with people in the way that you want to interact with them.
Totally. Listen, there's a lot of studies that have been done lately on happiness and loneliness and issues like that. And they found some interesting things. They found out that male loneliness is an epidemic in the United States, that women have much better social networking than men do for the most part. Men have there are gaps in it, right? We're good in some ways, but we're not good in others.
Is this the plot line of Joker?
What they
Spoilers,
found,
please.
I'm just gonna no. What I'm gonna say though is that listen, when you talk about why are all the lone shooters males? Why is that the way things go? And I think that I'm not going to simplify it and say that that's it, but I do think that alienation is a phenomenon that males in our society are hit extra hard by.
Yeah.
And
I think it's just it has a lot to do with the lack of access to emotions.
Yeah, emotional access, but also just people access in general. And much the same way that exercise physiologists have been studying is saying, how much exercise do you really need, right? And they figured out, okay, this is probably a really good limit to say that if you do at least this much, you are going to be you've moved from a danger zone into a good zone. They found that for men, that face-to-face time with with people that you like, twice a week for a minimum of
I have 2 game nights.
of
I did
1 to 2 hours is they call it the magic pill. It's the magic pill that keeps us happy, that keeps us connected.
Yeah.
And I really do think that that's one of the reasons that board gaming for me and it sounds like for you as well is such an important hobby, because it's tough to be connected. We live in a world where we're, especially in Los Angeles, we're in our cars, we're isolated, we're in our homes, we're on the internet, and it's just tough out there.
Yeah.
Man.
Just 30 seconds to bring it full circle. Not long after I played Battlestar Galactica, I think the second board game I ever played was Indonesia.
Yeah.
Which I was not ready for in any way and didn't enjoy at the time.
I didn't ramp you up correctly. I apologize.
We went from that to Indonesia. But I think it was interesting in that it all came full circle eventually, because just this year, I purchased my own copy of Indonesia after 10 years in the hobby because I really wanted it and it was out of print, and I really remembered our playing of it and really wanted to try it again. And we played it again this week and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, it kicked my butt, and I can't wait to play it again. But yeah, I think it all felt like it came full circle this week. And so it was interesting to talk about sort of my history with board games, because my second board game I ever played was Indonesia. And then this week we brought it to the table, my own copy of it now, 10 years later, and we played it together.
If I didn't get into games, and listen, I'll give you a super quick version of my own. My father was a partner in a Manhattan accounting firm, one of the big 8 accounting firms. And that would mean that at 5:30 in the morning, he would get on the train to Manhattan. And for half of the year, which were, the corporate tax season and all that sort of stuff, he would come home at 9 o'clock at night. So I would see him on weekends, but not so much during the weekdays.
Right.
And my poor sainted mother, she had 3 boys in her hands. I was the oldest, and there were 2 others. And she had to figure out, how am I going to keep this circus from falling completely apart? And she came up with game night. We would do board games, and we would do religiously.
You've got a great origin story.
Every week, we would play a game, and we would play, we'd play Monopoly and things like that, and Sorry and things like that. But the games that I remember the most were games like Pit, which is a trading game.
Yeah. I know it from Freaks and Geeks. There's a whole episode where Gabe Flaherty's trying to get the family to play.
Just, when my dad's finally home and we're playing this game where he is yelling that he wants 2 corn and I have 2 corn and I'm not going to give it to him. And it was really the perfect way for us to have a little family togetherness, right? We weren't always going to be able to sit down for a meal. We weren't always going to be able to do these sort of things, but we could always play a game. And for three boys who have competitiveness issues, and there's always that fight for dominance, the testosterone when you're a teenager, it happens. It was a way for us to model that in a kind of cool way.
Yeah.
And when I got
gave rules for it.
Yeah. And I would say that over the course of my life, when I got to high school, I didn't really have a lot of friends, kind of like you. I didn't really have a lot of friends in my younger years. And in high school, something just clicked. Like freshman year in high school, I went to Christian Brothers Academy, an all-Catholic, all-boys school where you had to wear a tie and a jacket every day.
Yeah.
And I just met, Andrew, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
They were friends of mine that I met on the very first day of high school.
Right.
And I sort of found my people. And I think I found myself a little bit.
Yeah.
And games was a way that we could spend a lot of time together, just getting to know each other and laughing and enjoying ourselves. Yeah. And I'm not sure that I would still be friends with Jim or with Andrew if it wasn't for that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I would even know you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, we wouldn't.
If it wasn't for this.
100%. Well, we have the same manager, and my manager was like, ugh, because I was trying to get him to play with me. And he was like, I don't want to play this crap, but I know someone who probably does. It's like, let me get this guy off my schedule. He keeps calling me, trying to set up times to play Battlestar Galactica.
Listen, in an increasing...
I don't know how he even knew that you liked board games.
Oh, I tell him everything.
Were you tried to get him in?
I'm not sure if I think I picked up on the social cues that Ollie gives off, that he's probably not the best, not the best for this. We had talked about fantasy football and all that sort of stuff, and I said, I'm big into all kinds of games. He's like, and he thought video games, and I said, no, you don't understand.
No, he doesn't. He still doesn't care.
He still doesn't. Anyway, Matt, thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, it was great.
I absolutely love that. And
it's my last episode.
All this for a little bit. For this series, I think it's a really great time to just sort of get down to why we game in the first place, and I think that's a lot of what we talk about.
Thanks, Tom.